You're 15 years old and you just became a trillionaire, not a millionaire, not a billionaire, a trillionaire. Your bank account has more zeros than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. You didn't invent anything revolutionary. You didn't cure cancer or build the next tech empire. Your uncle died. That's it. He had no kids, no wife, just you. And now everything he built, every asset, every investment, every offshore account, it's all yours. The lawyers explain it in a conference room with windows overlooking the city. You're wearing your school hoodie. They're wearing suits that cost more than cars. They slide papers across the table. You sign where they tell you to sign. Congratulations, you own more wealth than most countries. The first thing that changes is your phone. It doesn't stop. Every notification is someone you've never met asking for something. Charities, entrepreneurs, distant relatives you didn't know existed. Your Instagram blows up overnight, millions of followers. You didn't post anything. They just found you. The comments are a mix of congratulations and death threats. People telling you to give it all away. People calling you lucky. People saying you don't deserve it. You turn off notifications after the first day, but it doesn't matter. They find other ways. Your address leaks online within 48 hours. A news van parks outside your house by day 3. Your mom sits you down at the kitchen table. The same table where you used to do homework and eat cereal before school. She's scared. You can see it in her eyes. She tells you things are going to be different now. She's right. By the end of the week, you're not sleeping in your bedroom anymore. Security protocols. The firm your uncle used sends a team. 6 people rotate shifts around your house. Cameras on every angle. Bulletproof windows installed while you're at school. Except you're not going to that school anymore either. Too many variables, they say. Too much exposure. A private tutor arrives Monday morning. You ask about your friends. The head of security, a man named Chen with zero expression and a scar across his jaw, tells you friendships are complicated now. You'll understand soon enough. He's right about that too. Your best friend Marcus texts you constantly the first week, asking if it's true, asking if you're okay, asking if you want to hang out. You say yes to that last one. He comes over, gets stopped at the new gate, has to show ID, gets waved through by armed guards. When he finally makes it to your door, he's different, quiet. He sits on your couch like he's afraid to touch anything. You ask him about school. He gives short answers. You ask about the basketball team. He shrugs. An hour in, he asks the question, not directly. He talks about his mom's medical bills, how they're struggling, how it's been rough. Then he stops talking and just looks at you. You write him a check. $50,000, it's nothing to you now. A rounding error. He stares at it like you handed him a live grenade. He takes it. He leaves 10 minutes later. He doesn't text you again. Your other friends stop reaching out entirely. You're not in the group chat anymore. Someone removed you, or maybe you were never added to the new one. It's hard to tell. The money itself is abstract. You don't see it, don't touch it. It exists in accounts managed by people you've never met. But the things it buys become very real, very fast. Your mom doesn't work anymore. The firm insists. Security risk. She's home all day now in a house that's been renovated into something that doesn't feel like home. Your little sister gets a bodyguard for school. She's 12. She hates it, cries about it every morning, tells you she wants things to go back to normal. You tell her they will. You're lying. You know you're lying. She probably knows too. You try to go to a movie just once, just to feel like a normal teenager for 2 hours. Chen assigns 4 guards. They buy out the entire theater. You watch the film alone in a room built for 200 people. Popcorn tastes the same. Everything else is hollow. When you get home, there's a letter waiting. No return address. Just 7 words inside. We know where your sister goes to school. Chen has you moved that night. New house, new city. Your mom packs in silence. Your sister won't look at you. The tutor quits. Says it's not worth it. A new one starts the following week. You don't bother learning her name. 3 months in, you're living in a compound in a state you've never been to before. The walls are high. The gates are higher. 17 people work here. You know 4 of their names. You spend most days in your room, which is bigger than your old house. You've got everything a teenager could want. Gaming setup that costs 6 figures. Every console, every game. You play for maybe an hour before you're bored. What you don't have is someone to play with. Your phone buzzes, a number you don't recognize, you almost don't answer, but something tells you to pick up. It's Marcus. Different phone. He sounds scared. Says he needs to see you, says it's important, says he can't talk about it over the phone. Chen says no immediately. Too risky. Could be a setup. Could be anyone using Marcus's voice. You argue for the first time since this started. Tell Chen you're going insane in here. Tell him Marcus is the only friend you have left. Tell him you'll do whatever security protocol he wants, but you need this. Chen makes you wait 3 days while they vet the request, background checks, location sweeps, route planning. Finally, he agrees. 2 cars, 6 guards, you'll meet at a park 40 minutes away. Neutral ground, controlled environment. Marcus is already there when you arrive, sitting on a bench, alone. He looks thinner than you remember, tired. When he sees the convoy pull up, something crosses his face. Not quite fear, something sadder. You walk over. 2 guards follow 10 feet behind. Marcus stares at them, then at you. Can we talk without them? You glance back. Chen is watching from the car. You nod to the guards. They step back another 20 feet. Still watching. Still listening, probably. But it's something. Marcus doesn't waste time. His mom's treatments didn't work. The money you gave him bought her 6 more months. She died last Tuesday. The funeral was yesterday. You didn't know. Nobody told you. You weren't invited. He's not angry when he says it. Just factual. Flat. Like he's reading from a script someone else wrote. I wanted to tell you myself, he says, before you heard it somewhere else. You tell him you're sorry. The words feel useless. He nods anyway. There's a long silence. A kid runs past chasing a dog. Normal people doing normal things. You watch them disappear behind the trees. You know what's funny? Marcus says. That money you gave us, it changed everything. We paid off the house, got her the treatments, bought time we wouldn't have had. He looks at his hands. But it also meant I couldn't be there. Had to work 2 jobs to make up for quitting school. Had to keep everything running while she was sick. He finally looks at you. I don't blame you. I just need you to know that your help came with a cost I didn't see coming. You want to tell him you understand, but you don't. Not really. His problems are about having too little. Yours are about having too much. There's no bridge between those 2 places. I miss you, you say. It's the only true thing you can think of. Yeah, he stands up. Me too. He doesn't ask to hang out, doesn't suggest meeting up again, doesn't ask how you're doing. He just gives you this look like he's memorizing your face. Then he walks away. You watch him go. The guards step closer. Time to leave. Back at the compound, you find your sister in the garden. She's 14 now, taller, hasn't spoken to you in weeks beyond basic necessities. You sit down next to her. She doesn't move away, doesn't acknowledge you either. Marcus's mom died, you say. She pulls her knees to her chest. I know. I saw it online. I didn't get to say goodbye. Nobody gets to say goodbye to you either. Her voice is quiet. You're still here, but you're gone. She's right. You've been so focused on keeping everyone safe, keeping everyone comfortable, managing the money and the security and the threats, that you forgot to actually be present for any of it. Your sister stands up, brushes dirt off her jeans. I don't want your money. I don't want the house or the guards or any of it. She looks at you. I just want my brother back. She walks inside. You stay in the garden until it gets dark. The guards change shifts. Someone brings you dinner on a tray. You don't touch it. Later, you're standing at your window, looking out at the walls, the cameras, the armed patrols, all of it built to protect you, but you're starting to realize something. The money didn't just change your life. It ended it. The person you were before, the kid who had friends and went to movies and played basketball after school, that person is gone, and no amount of wealth can bring him back. You're 17 years old, you have everything, and you've never felt more poor. You pull out your phone, open a message to Chen, type 3 words, I want out. Not out of the money, you know that's impossible now. The accounts, the assets, the endless zeros, they're permanent. But out of this, the compound, the isolation, the performance of safety that's really just a gilded cage. Chen responds in 30 seconds. We need to talk. You meet him in his office. He's standing by the window, hands behind his back, waiting. I want to go back, you say. Real school, real friends, a real life. You know what happened last time. So we do it differently, smaller security, less obvious. I'll take the risk. Chen turns to face you. For the first time since you met him, he looks almost human, almost sad. The risk isn't yours alone anymore, he says. Your mother, your sister. Everyone close to you becomes a target the moment you step outside these walls. And there it is, the trap you've been living in without fully seeing it. The money didn't just buy you things, it bought you responsibility, obligations, the weight of knowing that your choices ripple outward into other people's lives in ways you can't control. You think about Marcus walking away in the park, your sister in the garden, all the people who used to be part of your world before the world became too dangerous to share. Then what do I do? Your voice cracks. You're still just a kid asking an adult for answers. Chen is quiet for a long moment. You decide what kind of trillionaire you want to be. One who hides from the world, or one who figures out how to live in it. He leaves you alone in the office. The sun is setting through the bulletproof glass. 17 people are working somewhere in this compound right now. Your family is here because you are. Your life has become their life, whether any of you wanted it or not. You're 17 years old, you have $1 trillion, and you finally understand what it cost. The question is what you're going to do about it.